Hey, this is Joe with Grow It Build It, and today I'm going to remove some large shrubs using regular tools. So at some point in every homeowner's life, there likely will come a time where they've got to remove a shrub or a bush. And if it's your first time, it might seem like a daunting task. Now, there are scores of videos out there with people pulling out shrubs with their trucks, using jacks, or even an engine hoist. But I won't be doing any of that. Instead, I'm going to show you how to remove a brush just using regular, common tools that most gardeners or homeowners have. I'll be taking out two different shrubs, one overgrown, unpruned, and unkempt, using only hand tools, and that will include digging out the entire root ball. I'll show you what to do. The other, which has been pruned, I'm just going to remove quickly with some power tools and then poison the stump so that it dies and stays in the ground to decompose. And I've used these methods many times. This picture, what you see here, is when I first bought my house back in 2016, a couple years before I had YouTube. I took out this entire row of forsythia bushes using this method with hand tools, and these were quite large. Much bigger than the one I'm going to actually do in this one. But my point is that this method works, and you can use common tools to do it. But I'll give you two different methods you can employ to take out a large bush. At the end of this video, you should know exactly what to expect if you need to do a similar task. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, so here is the first bush that I'm going to remove. It's about 6 foot diameter and 4 to 5 feet tall in the center. It's grown in a perfectly round shape, and the central stems are quite inaccessible at the moment. This is the one I'm going to use the hand tools on. And before we go too far, just make sure you don't have any utilities in the path of your shrub, because when you start digging around it could be hazardous. So call 811 US before you dig to make sure there's no utilities. Also, the best time to remove a shrub like this, in my opinion, is very early spring or fall, when it's not too hot outside and before any birds have started to make nests. But the general strategy that I will employ is to remove the branches, trying to gain access to the center stem that will reduce the overall number of cuts I have to make, so more efficient. Then digging to expose the roots, followed by severing those roots, then removing the root ball. For tools to remove the branches, some examples would be lopers, shears, pruners, pruning saws, or bow saws. Obviously, if you have power tools, those will work too, but in my experience, a set of loping shears and a pruning saw are probably the best here. And to begin, I'm just going to start removing branches, coming in from the top, trying to make a hole so that I can access the bottom center of the bush. And by cutting close to the bottom center like I am here, I can remove more material per single cut. Now, for branches that are roughly an inch to an inch and a half or less in diameter, I like to use loping shears because I can go through very quickly. With anything bigger than that, this small folding pruning saw is excellent. But after a few minutes with the loping shears, I can access the bottom of the bush with the pruning saw. Now I can use this compact pruning saw to reach tight spaces. The short stroke makes it great for cutting into the interior, while the aggressive teeth make very quick work of any of these branches. And as I cut and remove branches, I throw them a distance away to help keep the clutter down, making it easier to work. Alright, so after approximately 20 minutes, I have removed the bulk of the branches from this bush, and I can get ready to start digging on the roots. You may notice that I left around a foot of stem sticking up, and you'll see why later. But now it's time to dig. For digging out soil to expose the roots, you're going to need some kind of shovel or digging iron. For tougher soils like sod, you're going to want a digging iron because it'll make it easier to break up and loosen the soil. But this is probably the most tedious of the job, trying to locate hidden roots. You're basically jumping and stomping on a shovel, then moving dirt out to find roots at the same time. But take your time digging and shoveling and exposing the roots. As you find them, sever them using lopers, shears, a saw, or even a hatchet for some stout roots. If you think you've cleared enough, place your shovel underneath the root ball and rock back the handle to pry on the root ball. You're likely going to find more areas with hidden roots that you didn't know about. And as you locate them, just keep repeating the process, digging up the soil and trying to cut them. Eventually, you're going to get to a point where you're going to be able to break this thing free. And so here you can, put the shovel under and block it for leverage and try to pry it up. Or if you remember when I said I left some of the stems sticking up, you can kick these, and that applies a strong torque to the root ball and sometimes can break it free. Also, it makes a nice handle to pull up the entire clump and get it out of there. Once the root ball is out of the hole, you can roll it into a wheelbarrow to make transport easier. Then you just need to dispose of the branches. If you got somewhere you're allowed to dump them, then no problem. Otherwise, you'll have to dispose them in accordance with whatever your local ordinances are, or the dump. A lot of municipalities, though, do have somewhere for residents to dump brush, so check with that. But I have to fill in my hole, but this job is basically done, and it took approximately 45 minutes. 20 minutes to chop off branches, and then roughly another 20 minutes to get out the root ball. For reference, I am just over 6 feet tall and 200 pounds, and in reasonable shape. So, take that for what it's worth. Okay, for the next bush, I'm not going to be digging out any roots. Instead, I'm just going to be cutting it down and poisoning it with a herbicide. So, if you don't care if there's a short stem with roots, left in the soil, this is a very easy way to do it. Now, this bush was pruned more than the others, so the bottom trunk was fully exposed. And as such, I'm just going to cut this one off the easiest way I can, which is to use my electric chainsaw. It's a great saw for anyone whose property borders a forest like mine, or occasionally has the need, because it always starts up with the electric motor. But I cut through the trunk in about 30 seconds and drag away the bush. Now, to poison it, I'm going to spray concentrated brush killer directly on the stump. This is in accordance with the directions on the label of the brush killer, but the herbicide is triclopyr. As far as applying the poison, it's an extremely targeted application of herbicide that doesn't last long in the environment. The half-life is measured in hours when exposed to sunlight, and even when buried in the soil, it's undetectable in 6 months. The key factor for poisoning a stump is speed. You want to spray that stump or paint the stump within 10 minutes of cutting it, and the sooner the better. And obviously when you're applying any kind of a chemical, it's a good idea to put on some protective rubber gloves like I did here. But, I sprayed this right after cutting it, and the stump is now dead. This method of poisoning the stump works, as the dozens of dead bush honeysuckle stumps in my backyard in the forest behind my house will show. I've probably killed well over 100 invasive shrubs using this poison. Just be quick and it should work. Okay, time to review. So you can take out a decent sized bush in less than an hour depending on how accessible it is. And for reference, again, I'm about 6 foot tall and in reasonable shape. But this kind of job shouldn't take more than an hour for most bushes. If you don't mind leaving a small stump cut close to the ground, then you can simply cut and then poison the freshly cut stump, and that'll reduce the amount of labor by 50%. But alright, that's all I got for you today. Hopefully you found it helpful if you've never done this type of job before. I'll leave some affiliate links below to the types of tools I used in making this video. I use these tools every year in regular maintenance around my property. They're affordable and can help make quick work of pruning and a lot of various jobs. As always, if you have any questions, just ask in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. All right, you all have a good one.